Hey guys, I'm Bhuvan and I'm a flight instructor and public relations officer at UVL. Today this video is about how to fly a pattern um, which is part of our check ride to get into UVL. So yeah, let's get started. Here you see that I am currently at Newark or KEWR. And yeah, so let's get into the cockpit. First I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start my master switch. Next I'm gonna go to my lights and turn on my nav, my seat belts, and no smoking signs. Next I will check the METAR of the airport. Okay, so the METAR says that the winds are variable at 4 knots, 10 miles of visibility, and broken clouds at 3,500 feet. However, we will not be going that high. Next I noticed that the airport elevation is 17 feet. So my pattern altitude would be 1,500 plus 17 feet, that is 1,517. However, I struggle to put that in the autopilot, so I just stick with 1,500. Next, my plan is to do a left pattern on 4 left, meaning that I will do left crosswind, left downwind, and then left base. However, I would be arriving on 4 right. I would not do a right pattern since that would cause me to go over Manhattan. And I don't think that is very realistic. Okay, so after checking on my briefing, I'm gonna turn my beacon light on, indicating that I'm gonna push back, and I'm gonna start my engines. Right, so let's push, and I will start my engines after I have crossed the solid white line you see. And there you go, I'm crossing it, and I'm gonna start my engine 2. And now I'm gonna stop since I've aligned myself on the taxiway. You see my engine 2 is spooling up. Now that my engine 2 is fully functional, I'm gonna start my engine 1, as you see here. Now, as my engine 1 is spooling up, I'm gonna put my flaps down. I'm gonna set my trim. I'm gonna use 5% since that's ideal for an Embraer. I'm gonna check how I'm gonna taxi to the runway, and I'm gonna announce my taxi.
Newark Liberty traffic, United 012 Victor Alpha, taxiing to runway 4 left.
Parking brakes released, and I always do power under 20% since that's what most pilots do. So as you see, I'm using 16% right now to start rolling. And there you go. I'm setting my UI just for myself. You'll probably have other stuff there too. I just like to put my ground speed and airspeed visible.
One eternity later.
Okay, after that pretty boring taxi, I'm gonna prepare my remaining in pattern etc callout. So I just have to press one single button. I usually do that. Y'all get into it separately. Notice that I'm going to the end of the runway and not doing an intersection departure. I'm using this exit or taxiway since I'm not that big of an aircraft and I don't want to go all the way to the end. However, this is a great end of the runway taxiway. Alright, I announced my takeoff and I'm gonna turn on my strobes and landing lights. And I'm gonna double check nobody's on the runway or nobody's on final. And I'm gonna start lining up. Yep, a little bit. Alright, after seeing that I've lined up, I'll put 50% power. And then I'll do 70% since the Embraer has some powerful engines and I don't want to use all of them since I'm light. There's 80 knots, 100 knots. And at this point I felt the plane was starting to shake, so I decided to pull up slowly. And that was the takeoff. After the positive rate, I put my gear up and start aiming for the 1500 AG altitude mark. My speed was climbing, which is all good since I'm gonna be flying around 200 knots. Nope, sorry about that. That's 1,000 feet. I'm gonna turn my heading autopilot. I'm gonna slow. Yep. The autopilot tends to do that. I have to put a little bit of speed since my plane will be shaking because the autopilot doesn't know how to act. And I'm gonna set my autopilot speed and I'm gonna put my flaps up too. Alright, now that I'm all on autopilot, I'm gonna announce my left crosswind.
Newark Liberty traffic. United
And I'm
012
gonna
Victor Alpha is on
start
left
turning.
crosswind. Runway 4 right.
Notice that I am now calling it based on the arrival runway. Now I'm calling left crosswind of 4 right, since that is my arrival runway. Okay, now I feel like I am good for my downwind. I'm gonna call that out and I'm gonna start turning. The way you can find the downwind heading is that you can add 180 to the departure runway number, and then you will find the heading to which you turn. Same thing goes with base and crosswind. So for crosswind, you can just subtract 90 degrees from the current heading you're flying at, and for base you also do that, I believe. You also subtract 90 degrees from the current heading you're flying. The next thing that I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna select the ILS for my arrival runway. So I'll go to the the runways, and I'm gonna select 4 right as my ILS runway. So here you see my glide slope is starting to come alive, and after I have crossed my glide slope, I will start turning for my base. For
Newark
right,
Liberty
and
traffic.
I'm gonna start turning.
United 012 Victor Alpha is on left base. Runway 4 right.
At this point, I will also reduce my speed. I'm just gonna go 160. Usually the speed for downwind is 220 knots, and for crosswind, I'm sorry, not crosswind, for base it's 180. And I'm also gonna switch my source, since I had selected 4 right as my ILS runway. Okay, so after flying on base for a couple of minutes, I'm gonna start turning a little bit so I can establish the localizer perfectly. And I'm also gonna announce my final on my arrival runway, which is 4 right.
Liberty traffic. United 012 Victor Alpha is on final. Runway 4 right.
Okay, at this point I see that I am established on the ILS, so I'm going to turn off my autopilot and hand fly the aircraft in.
Fifty, 40, 30, 20, 10.
Okay, after that Ryanair type landing, I'm gonna start putting some brakes and vacate the runway. Okay, the next thing I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna announce that I will
Newark
be
Liberty
crossing
traffic. United
the
012
4 left
Victor
runway.
Alpha. Crossing
At the same
runway
time,
4 left.
I'll just retract all my spoilers and flaps and make sure that my strobes and landing lights are still running. I'll see that nobody's on final or departing, and after crossing the runway, I will turn off my strobes and continue taxiing to my gate. At this point, if your aircraft also has APU or modeled is for APU, and you will turn on your APU at this point. Okay, so thank you for joining me today. I hope you have learned something from this video, and I would love to see you flying for United Virtual in the future. See you in the skies.